that gives me pleasure.
Okay, here's the thing. Display your holdings from the core you are. Not to be or not to be. And second of all, you're off.
I'm not that terrible. I'm fairly good compared to others.
Alright, well, if you think that you're so amazing, why don't you just go on and explain the whole history of acting? You can put it in.
Alright, I will.
I was being sarcastic. You don't actually have to do what you believe.
No, it's okay. Acting began a tradition in Greek celebrations to the god of wine fertility, Dionysus. It's Dionysus! Your acting's bad and you should feel bad!
Alrighty then.
Do your thing. Acting became more of a tradition, and actors were seen higher in Greek society and were given more respect. The Middle Ages had a much different view on acting, and payment between actors was awfully biased. That is very true. Actors who play characters such as kings or other highly respected figures were given a high amount of pay, while if an actor was playing God, then he would receive the most pay out of everyone. Funny thing is, if an actor played the devil, he would receive little to no pay due to the effect that religion had on medieval society. Then the Renaissance came, which was really when acting had become a big thing at that point. Sort of. It was more like performing arts in general were becoming a lot more popular.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. People were fascinated by the use of music in Greek plays, and so they created their own version, opera. And also, still with the acting, they created improvisation acting, which had no script and just a basic outline of the plot. Characters were making up as they
Then after that came the Elizabethan era of acting, which, in a way, modernized the theater. Famous works like Shakespeare's really required an understanding of the characters and the story, which I can clearly see that you lack that.
Really?
No.
Yeah, that was stupid. Anyways, the Elizabethan era of theater was quite interesting, if you ask me.
How so?
Well, the thing is that acting was considered an honorable job back then, so women were not allowed to become actresses. So instead, to play the female roles, they hired young boys who hadn't gone through puberty yet. To me, that's...
Wonder how awkward those love scenes must have been.
I choose to block that thought out of my brain. Anyways, the production of those plays were not as good as it is nowadays. Oftentimes, the actor would get the script right before the show even started, and then some people behind the curtain would just whisper his lines over to him in a technique called cue acting.
Globe Theater seating was also quite strange. The cheapest seats were called groundlings, and people had to stand the whole play.
Yeah, those plays were long, too. Like 5 acts or something? Ridiculous. These flimsy legs probably wouldn't even last halfway through the first act.
Same. Plus, the most expensive seats are right on stage, which are pretty worth it considering you're right next to the actors.
Yeah, I would so get those seats the minute I had enough for them. Man, being able to be right next to those famous actors like William Shakespeare.
Wasn't Shakespeare a playwright and not an actor?
Actually, Shakespeare was one of the most remarkable actors of them all. Here's the thing, no one really knows how his career started. Some people say he was picked up by an acting troupe. Other people say he had moved to London to begin his career.
Who were some other famous actors?
Oh man, there was a ton. Henry Condell was the editor for Shakespeare's first collection of plays, The First Folio. Richard Burbage was one of the leading actors in that collection of plays. And John Hemmings was the financial director of Shakespeare's acting company, Chairman's Men. Man, I could just go on about all these famous Elizabethan actors, but that would take ages to just cover all of them.
I find most interesting about the actors is how they adapted to the shape of the Globe Theater.
How's it shaped?
Well, it was built in 1599, so it was much different than any other theaters today. The stage was in the middle, and all the seats were around the stage making it hard for the actors, considering they had to face all different directions to face the crowd.
Were all of Shakespeare's plays designed for specifically this sort of theater?
Almost all of them were. Most Elizabethan plays were designed for this kind of theater.
You know, it's a shame that this such unique type of theater isn't used that often.
The club did burn down in 1613. It was rebuilt in 1614, and then shut down again in 1642. Seems like people didn't like it that much.
I don't think people would burn down a theater because they didn't like it.
The 17th century. What else would they do?
I don't know. Revolt?
Maybe. There's also a constant demand for new material. The actors weren't trusted. Thankfully, new theaters were created, and the actors became Elizabethan superstars.
Man, what would it be like if we were Elizabethan actors? Who are you?
Well, let's find out.
Whoa! What was that? Jimmy, are you okay?
Jimmy? Who doth this Jimmy you speak of?
God, Jimmy. You've become a Shakespearean actor. Why are you wearing the same clothes?
Jimmy? My name is not Jimmy. My name is Richard Hemingway III. You're right. What are these clothes I'm wearing?
Just time to introduce you to modern times, since I don't know how to get you back.
What do you mean? What year is it?
2014. And let me tell you, when you go back to the 16th century, it'll never be the same again.
What doth thou mean by that?
Well, you may be a little bit scarred, you may lose some faith in humanity, but at least you get to know what the future's like.
So, what is it like?
Let's start with pop culture trends, since I feel like that's the most changed throughout the years. Let me first tell you what swag is.